Hi, Alex. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing fine as well. You know, I am so excited to have you on the show, Alex, for some reasons. The first one is I strictly believe that knowledge is the solution to what's problem. And secondly, I firmly believe that there are some things that Alex knows that some of my audience needs to hear directly from your mouth in order to experience transformation. I firmly believe that. And even I myself, I know I am so that's so saddened for me that I'm definitely going to learn one or two things from your story, your experiences, your insight. Okay, so Alex, for that reason, I want us to get started with your introduction and your journey so far, the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Alex, over to you.
Sure. I hope I can justify those high expectations. So, I have a pretty convoluted history, you could say. I was born in the Soviet Union, raised in Israel. I lived in Japan for a bit, then in California. Now I'm in Texas. Throughout this journey, I started off working as a software engineer, and I went up the management track until I was the VP engineering of a VR camera company. After that, I started my own technical consulting company, ran that for 7 years. And then I felt this calling to try to fix a big problem that I see everywhere around me, which is that most people are consuming low quality information, what we call junk. Especially when they're trying to read the news. It seems people spend more and more time right now trying to consume the news and understand what's going on, but they understand less and less of what is true and what is untrue. The system is flooded with junk. And so I founded a company called Otherweb that uses AI to try to evaluate information quality and help consumers find the best quality information, the most informative articles, articles that try to give them facts instead of convincing them of something, right? Because I think one of the problems we have right now is that most journalists are trying to persuade and not inform. And that gets mixed with now foreign governments trying to persuade you of something else. We want to give users the best, most informative things that they can consume so they can get the most information in the least amount of time.
That's a great solution you're providing, Alex. That's amazing. Because you're right. You're right. There are a lot of junks on the internet. Low quality informations. You're right. And seeing that you founded Otherweb, that's amazing. Okay, so shall we get started with the questions, Alex? Okay, so what is clickbait and why does clickbait exist?
Right, so clickbait is a technical term where we describe an article where the headline doesn't match the body of the article and is meant to attract attention. What you're seeing right now on the web more and more is that people who write an article, or sometimes their editors, don't even write a single headline that is the most descriptive and actually tells you what's going to be in the article. They write 10 headlines, and then they test which one gets better click-through rate once it appears on the website where only the headline is. So what you end up with is headlines that are just there so that people click on them. But when people click on them, what they see is not what they expected to see. You're seeing a lot of specific things or features in headlines right now that never used to exist before. Things like this plant reduces chances of cancer by 50%, right? But they don't tell you which plant. You have to click, right? Or you will see headlines that end with "you won't believe what happened next." Right? Then you have to click to find out what happened next. Chances are you won't,
Hmm,
right? So this is a big feature of the web right now. You're seeing it everywhere, right?
tell you, right?
CNN has
I tell
headlines
you,
that
I
end
tell
with
you.
"you won't believe why." I can give you some examples, right? Everybody uses these tools because clicks are everything. Now, why are clicks everything?
Hmm,
We've had advertising for a long time. One of the things that happened on the internet around 2003 is that we became really good at tracking how well advertising is doing. roughly around the time when Google acquired AdSense in 2003. We learned how to track every single click, every single view, and attribute every single purchase decision to those, right? And so what happens when you have this is that now people who are creating content, if they are monetizing using ads, which is the majority of people, want to maximize clicks and views that their content generates. Because then purchases will be attributed directly to those clicks and views. They will make money this way. We have pay-per-click and pay-per-view advertising. We don't have pay-per-truth or pay-per-quality. We used to, but we don't.
Wow.
And so you have this single selective pressure on all content on the internet to basically drift towards clickbait over time. Because if I am trying to generate stuff that is good for clicks, and you are trying to generate stuff that is good for quality, I'm going to make more money than you.
True.
And so either you're going to start creating clickbait as well, or you'll go out of business and you'll be replaced with somebody else like me. Right? So over time, good intentions lose and incentives win. And the incentives right now are to create as much clickbait as possible.
Oh man, I just knew it. I knew it. I knew that I'm definitely going to learn something, and I'm learning already. Amazing. I never ever thought about this stuff as, I never knew it as clickbait. Even though, when I see articles like that, it catches my attention. Now that you've explained it, I get it. I get it. Okay, so let us talk about journalism. So is journalism really worse than before, or was it always about the same?
So it's certainly getting worse in a few ways. One is the way which we just described, right? Over time, incentives win. And so even if journalists have the best ethical intentions in mind, they get squeezed by the ones who are somewhat less serious about their ethical intentions. So over time, the percentage of journalists who are just there to attract attention because that's how you make money is growing, and the percentage of journalists who are really trying to hold the line and maintain an ethical stance is becoming small. But even with the ethical stance, I've seen quite a few studies that indicate that we have a bit of a drift from the 50s until now, and that journalists today are, and they're trying to persuade more than inform very often. You never used to have journalists that make it very clear that they disagree with a particular politician when they cover them. That's happening all the time now. But if you read the New York Times from the 1950s, or if you watch Walter Cronkite on TV, then most of the time when they describe what a particular politician said or did, you can't even tell what the journalist's opinion is. That is good journalism, in my opinion. If I am watching you cover a politician that you disagree with or that you really agree with, and I can't tell, then you're informing me. But if not only can I guess what your opinion is, but your opinion is front and center because your headline is Trump lied or Biden is incompetent, right? Then that's not journalism at this point. You're not journaling what is happening. You are commentating, right? You are trying to give us your opinion, or maybe you're persuading, maybe you're propagandizing.
Yeah.
We have many words for this, but journaling is not one of them.
Hmm. Hmm. I got that. I got that. I got that. Okay, still on journalism, but let us look at how AI is affecting journalism. Can you talk to us about that?
Oh, there's going to be many ways in which it affects it. Let's start with not journalism itself, but the clickbait situation we discussed earlier. Because one of the things that artificial intelligence does is it basically enhances our ability to do things faster over and over. And it's really good at writing. So if I am trying to write clickbait articles, and until now I've been able to produce 15 clickbait articles per day, with the help of generative AI, I can produce 500. I can produce 1,000. Right? So the amount of junk on the internet is definitely going to increase because producing high quality articles is still somewhat difficult. Producing low quality stuff, now all the floodgates are open. It's really easy. That's one element. Now, if you look at professional journalism, there is another element there, which is AI is improving in its writing abilities. It's still, especially if you look at the publicly available models like GPT or like Claude, Sonnet, Gemini, all of those, It's still writing a little bit like an undergraduate student trying to get an A. It's not really professional writing. And that's because A, it was trained on all the content in the world. And B, it basically received human feedback from students typically, because those are the cheapest form of labor. And so the students told them what they like, what they didn't like. So it ends up writing a little bit like a student naturally. But if you fine tune any good large language model just based on writings from Reuters, because Reuters is really good, precise, informative writing, it will start writing like somebody who works for Reuters. So I think we are less than 1 year away from a situation where the best models write better than 99% of journalists. And when I say write better, I mean they don't know what to write about. They can't go and interview a whistleblower in a garage somewhere. Right? They can't badger a politician long enough for the politician to accidentally tell the truth, right? So they don't gather information. But if you give them a set of facts and you say, write a coherent article that connects all these facts together in a way that is pleasant to read, they will do that better than most of the professional journalists that do this today. And if you think about what that creates in the market, it's one serious disruption. First of all, you don't need this many journalists, probably. The ones who remain journalists can focus 100% of their time on gathering facts and not writing them down, because writing down is free. Second of all, if writing down is free, then if you already have one or two articles on a subject, the next one is free, and the next one is free, and the next one is free, right? So there's no need for 50 people to describe the same set of facts. It's enough to have one. Everything else is free. If you take the next step after that, why should you and I read the same article? It makes no sense, right? We have a slightly different background. Like my mother tongue is Russian and then Hebrew, so maybe my vocabulary is somewhat skewed. Maybe you have a different mother tongue, so you have a slightly different vocabulary because you learned English differently. Maybe we have a different amounts of time. I have 10 minutes a day, you have 20 minutes a day. So your articles can be somewhat longer, right? All the articles can be created for each of us on demand based on our vocabulary, based on our attention span, based on how much time we have. There's no reason to just create a set amount of articles and send the same one to a lot of different. Everything can be created on demand, kind of like in Star Trek. There's no somebody made 1,000 identical meals. You go to the replicator and you get the meal you want, right? And it's created just for you on demand. So we're entering a world of basically a Star Trek replicator for content. And just to take this one step further, think about the concept of a publication. Like New York Times. A whole bunch of people who work for a long time to create a daily issue with 300 articles, roughly. Do you need a daily issue if you can write on demand? Do you need to package 300 articles together and call it a daily issue if everything can be created at different times based on when somebody asks for a particular article? If you don't, then I can understand the investigative wing of the New York Times. They gather facts. But do you need the actual organization? Probably not. Do you need Google in this kind of situation? To the extent that Google is a search engine company, right? You go there, you type a query, you get the list of the best results for that query. They're amazing. Those are the best results. Do you need a list of results if something can be written for you on demand? Right? You ask, what are the best laptops in the world? Do you need links to different articles about the best laptops in the world? Or can Google write you an article using a good LLM based on everything they learned from the world? If they can write you an article, what is the point of all the people that are currently doing SEO or content creation to monetize it using ads on Google? Those industries are going away. So there's going to be quite a bit of disruption.
Oh man. That's no. That's deep. That's deep. Okay, so if tech companies cause the problem, then how can tech company fix
Well, how can somebody else fix
it?
it? I think if the problem is caused, and by the way, it kind of depends on which of the problems we're talking about, but let's say we're talking about this attention economy, where basically the way to make money is to attract your attention, which means the way to make money is to get something out of you, right? In most industries, the way to make money is to give you value for that money. But right now, if you're in this TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, even Facebook world, right? Then the way for a company to make money is to get as much time out of you, to get as many shares out of you, to get as many clicks and comments out of you. That's how these companies make money. And what they give you in return, that doesn't matter. What matters is did they get time out, right? And obviously that is a problem that came out of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is amazing at this. In fact, there's one lab at Stanford that basically pioneered the entire science, right? And most people in most companies that work on how to get people hooked on particular attention-based products have worked in that lab at some. Only a tech company can come up with the solution to something like this, the antidote that actually shifts the economy towards, let's give you as much value as possible in little. Because I don't think anybody outside the tech industry can even understand what the tech industry has done for the most part at the technical level.
Oh man, you're actually bringing um my eyes to some things that I never even thought of. You know, it's amazing to have you on the show, Alex. Okay, so we've got one more question to go. So,
Sure.
based on what you said about AI, so is it risky to use AI and can we trust it?
Well, you absolutely cannot trust it. But then
Hmm.
again, you cannot trust humans in general either, right? You can trust specific humans that you know, but generally speaking, do you trust everybody in that group of a million humans? Probably not. Some people in a million are going to be bad. So with AI, you certainly shouldn't trust it. I hope that we're going to actually get to a standard where most AI models are at least source available, if not open source. We made our models source available so people can look at the code. They can put a specific piece of input into the model, see what the output is. And this way they can be sure we're not hiding anything. And, right? In that way, they would be better than humans because with a human, you can't really sample their brain and see what would you answer if I gave you this input, right? You don't have that with an editor in a newspaper, let's say, which is why editors in newspapers can hide a bias. I think that it's pretty important to make sure AI cannot hide bias. So I would be pushing for a source available AI world, but we'll see. Most companies are not doing that. We're one of the only. But in general, AI is a really powerful tool, right? So if you think about this kind of progression that we've had over the past 80 years, where we used to have people whose title was computer. They sat at a desk with a pen and paper and compute, right? Then we gave them calculators. They started computing faster. Then we created a device called a computer. And now we hired people called programmers who could program that computer. And the human computer was no longer necessary, right? Because programmer plus electronic computer was much faster. Then we created high-level programming languages and a device called a compiler or a piece of software called a compiler, right? That would translate that into machine code that could program a computer, right? And now we're getting into a world where we have AI models that write code by themselves and basically do the work of the software engineer that writes the software. So we're adding more and more layers, and each layer is more powerful than the previous one. It's still humans doing the work. I don't believe it when people say AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that. Humans are going to do things with a really powerful tool. Do you trust humans? We discussed that. Probably not. Therefore, we have to be very careful with how this disseminates. We have to be very careful and make sure that in countries that are relatively good actors in the world, this develops faster than in countries that are relatively bad actors.
Hmm.
Because if the worst countries have the strongest tools, it typically ends badly, as we've seen from history. We have to also make sure that there's a lot of transparency in how it is used, because one of the things that we saw in the US, even in recent years, is that because AI is somewhat opaque in how it operates, right? In software, you can see what the instructions were, and you can find why a particular decision. In AI, you can't. You basically start it off as a child, you give it information, and it learns something by itself. And then if you ask it, why did you do this? It cannot always explain, just like a human. So we've seen that situation abused. Like, for example, there were different pieces of software that ended up discriminating against people of a particular race in hiring decisions. And when a human does that, you can take them to court. right? You can say you discriminated against
Yeah,
people of
yeah,
this ethnicity. You are sued. Justify your decisions. But today, that human can say, well, I didn't make that decision. We have this AI system.
yeah.
I just
Mm,
paid money for it. It had good reviews. It ended up just not hiring any women or not hiring any black, but
mm,
it's not my fault. And you can't sue the AI. So we have to be really careful with this also as a possible abuse of AI and make sure humans are always responsible and they can't have this cop out of, well, AI did it.
mm.
AI is not an actor that makes decisions. Humans do. And if they choose the wrong AI and end up discriminating, let's say, we want to be able to punish them.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, Alex, so to bring this to an end, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those ones who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, how can that be possible?
My big message over the past few years to everybody has been that we all know it's important to pay attention to what we put in our mouth. If we eat the wrong things, we're going to be unhealthy. It's time for us to pay attention to what we put into our brains. Because if we read the wrong things, if we watch the wrong things, if we listen to the wrong, we're also going to be unhealthy, just mentally unhealthy. So whatever you do, whether you use tools like Otherweb or other aggregators or other filters that make sure that your information is higher quality, or maybe you just choose not to consume news altogether and you read books that are 2,000 years old, that's a good approach, right? Highly recommend it. Things that stood the test of time typically are less misinforming than things that were written yesterday. Or maybe you talk to your neighbors more. Whatever it is that you choose to do, I urge you to think about what you want to do and to plan what you're going to do. Because if you don't have a plan, TikTok is going to decide for you. And what they decide for you is probably not going to be good for you. It's going to be good for their bottom line. So I urge listeners to pay attention and to have a plan. And if anybody wants to contact me, it's alex@otherweb.com. If you like our products, tell me you like them. If you don't like our products, then definitely please write to me and tell me what you don't like about them. And that's about it. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, Alex. Oh man, oh, man. Thank you so very much. Thank you. You know, it has been a interesting moment with you on the show. Things that I haven't heard from anyone before. You've actually said it to me, and that's amazing. You know, that's one of the reasons why I love knowledge. You're trying to seek out, and not just junk, as you said, but quality information. So I got that. So that's gonna be the end of the show, Alex. Thank you for coming. And thank you for blessing us with this amazing stuff. Thank you so much.
Much for having me.
That was a